Let me start this morning by sharing just a little story about a former player of mine. This was, back in the mid 90s sometime. I recruited two guys from the same high school right there in Lexington. And one of them, both of them were great kids. One of them was a star Little League pitcher, pitched in the Little League World Series, and I think, led his team, the high school team, to the state tournament, and was just a star. The other pitcher on that team was good, but he wasn't the star. But the second pitcher that I'm talking about, his name is Janook Talwalkar. He was the first Indian. His parents were from India, but he grew up in a home that, probably very different than our homes. He didn't hear a lot about Jesus growing up. So I think it was his freshman or sophomore year. He's in my office one day and he sees a Bible on my desk. And he said, Coach, do you read that? And he pointed at the Bible and I said, yeah, I read it. I probably don't read it as much as I should, but I do read it. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. And so we talked about it a little bit, and he said, he showed more interest. And I said, Janook, if I gave you a Bible, would you read it? And he said, absolutely, I would. And this guy was on academic scholarship. He was, as I mentioned earlier, brilliant. So I gave him a Bible. I broke an NCAA rule, and I gave him a Bible. And you're not supposed to give, as most of you know, you're not supposed to give things to student athletes. But if I'm going to get fired over that, that's okay. So, I spent some time with Janook as the years went on, and he never showed a lot of interest in the Bible. And occasionally I would ask him, hey, Janook, what have you been reading lately? What about the Bible that I gave? Yeah, I've read some, and, just didn't show a tremendous amount of interest that I sensed. So, fast forward almost 25 years, I started having a lot of knee problems, and I'd had one major surgery way back when I was a player, but my other knee started flaring up, and Janook Talwalkar became an orthopedic surgeon. So, so I said, hey, I trust this guy. I'm going to call him up and make an appointment. And he ordered an MRI. He said, Coach, you've got a torn cartilage in your good knee, and there's what we call a flap in there, and that's why you're having so much pain. So let's set up, and I'll take care of that for you. And so at that point, I was just glad to get something done because I could barely walk. So I go in for surgery, and Sharon goes into the little, pre-op room with me or whatever, and Janook comes in, and I'm thinking, man, I'm so proud of Janook. He's a well-known surgeon here in town now, and he's doing really well. And so he explained all the things about surgery to me, and he said, Sharon, before you leave, would you mind, and Coach, would you mind if I pray for you? And guys, I'm telling you, I was just overwhelmed. I didn't know what kind of prayer he's going to pray, but he prayed a beautiful prayer, and he prayed it in Jesus' name. And I was so thrilled about that. And I thought, back in the mid 90s, when I gave him that Bible, and I was kind of concerned about him not showing more interest, at that point, I realized that I had made the gospel about me. And when he didn't show more interest, it was almost like I was keeping score, and I couldn't check him off of my list. I know that sounds horrible, but when I reflected back, that's just the way I felt. But the good news, and we're talking about the good news, we're talking about the gospel. The good news is that Janook married a godly woman. And so now he is a follower of Christ. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I personally led him to Christ. It's all about God. Sometimes we have a tendency to make the gospel about us. we have a tendency to make the Bible about us. And every story we read in the Bible, we try to picture ourselves in that story. And what we should be doing is allowing God to point us toward Jesus. The whole Bible is centered around Jesus Christ. And when we read the Bible, instead of me being putting myself in David's place and slaying the giant and look how tough I am and boy, God is really using me, it should be more about, wow, look at how God used this young man to slay that giant. It's all about Jesus. It's all about, as we read and study and learn, growing and understanding that that book points us towards Jesus Christ. I remember about that same era that I was coaching Chinook Tall Walker. That's, I think, when The Purpose Driven Life was published. And I remember opening that book and starting to read that book. And just about the first thing that Rick Warren says in that book is, it's not about you. And guys, I've never thought my ego was this big, but my first thought was, if this book isn't about me, then why do I want to read it? If it's not about helping me, then why do I want to read it? And I closed it. I didn't read it for a few months. But the second time I opened that book, I read it. And I realized that it's all about Jesus. And it's all about us having a relationship with him. I read a quote this morning by a guy named Pete Briscoe. I really don't know who Pete Briscoe is, and some of you guys may know, but I love this quote. He said, "The wrath of God has been satisfied by the sacrifice of God so that we can experience the intimacy of God." Isn't that good? I'm going to say that again. The wrath of God, our sin, the wrath of God has been satisfied by the sacrifice of God so that we can experience the intimacy of God. I love that. You know, it's so beautiful that the creator of the universe wants to have an intimate relationship with us. And so this weekend, as you celebrate the 4th of July, as you spend time with friends or family or whatever you have planned to do, I just hope that you enjoy and you're thankful for walking in the intimacy of God. So this is a time where, you know, I know some of you guys are busy and we're going to spend about 10 more minutes here just talking about this. But if you need to leave, I certainly understand. But I've got a couple of questions that I want to throw out there just to get a little discussion going. And I want to add, this is a biggie. This is a big question. How has the gospel changed your life? I guess another way to ask that question is, how has Jesus changed your life?